break this down and make it real easy for those of you watching on YouTube. If you're standing out here today on the nicest day that you're probably going to see the rest of this winter on a Saturday, you probably already know everything I'm about to tell you. But this is for those of you viewing from the comfort of your own homes right now and listening to what we have to say. There is seriously nothing in this country that is or in the world that is a bigger threat to the future of our nation, to the future of our prosperity, to our national security than inflation, than the Federal Reserve Bank, which drives inflation. And inflation is very simple. It's like this. If I could walk out my door and there were diamonds lying around everywhere, just like pebbles, then they wouldn't be as valuable as they are now. No one would spend $1,000 on an engagement ring when you can just pick a diamond up off the floor. That's inflation. The diamonds would be inflated in that sense. There'd be more of them. The more you have of something, the less valuable it is. The more scarce something is, the more valuable it is. That's why diamonds are valuable. So when the Federal Reserve Bank, which is the private central bank in this country, starts printing money, they devalue the currency. And that's a very regressive tax. And by regressive, I mean that the poorer you are, the more it hurts you. And the wealthier you are, the less it hurts you. And if that doesn't make sense, let me explain. If tomorrow the dollar were only half as valuable as it is today, you could only buy half as much with your dollar because it's been inflated and it's worth less, Bill Gates would be just fine. His lifestyle wouldn't change. He'd still have a jet and a mansion and all the nice things he has. But a poor family that can barely meet their monthly expenses will be broken by that. That's a regressive tax. It's a tax that hurts the poor and helps the wealthy, especially when we're inflating the currency because we're printing dollars to give to wealthy Wall Street banks. It's a transfer of wealth to wealthy Wall Street bankers and to wealthy corporations in our military-industrial complex that profit from bombs we drop overseas on children and families at the expense of other poor children and families here in the United States who have to pay for it every time they go to the checkout counter and their dollar buys less than it did last year and last decade. And the middle class is getting crunched hard too. As someone asked earlier, who's profiting from all this? It's the big corporations on Wall Street. It's Boeing. It's the military-industrial complex. It's everybody that got money from the stimulus package. It's all of the big agro corporations that get government subsidies. And it's all paid for with dollars that the Federal Reserve prints, and that devalues your money that's in your wallet. And you take that hit yourself. And the poorer you are, the more of a hit it is to your income. And if the dollar collapses, which is, if we keep printing like this, the dollar will collapse. That will destroy our nation. Inflation destroys nations. We've seen it happen all throughout history. We saw it happen to the Romans. We saw it happen in Germany in the Weimar Republic. And when it happened in the Weimar Republic, people became so desperate that they wanted someone who could fix it. And they became so scared that things were getting a little bit restless in the streets, which made more people even more scared. And the Fed. And made them want someone who can fix that. So when you've got restlessness and chaos in the streets because people are broken in a system, an economic system that's been broken by inflation, everyone wants a strong man. And that's where we got Adolf Hitler, ladies and gentlemen. That's where we got Adolf Hitler. And that is the premise that every government uses to become a police state, to repress our liberties, is, well, we need a strong man now. Why? Because things are so bad. Why did things get so bad? Because you destroyed your country's economy by inflating away all of its money. And that's how it's always happened, and we're seeing it happen here, and something has to be done. So that's the scope of the problem we're dealing with, and here's the solution. We have national solutions, and we've talked about those at these rallies in the past, like end the Fed bills, audit the Fed bills, legislation that congressmen in Washington might pass to put away the Fed's power and take it back to the legislature where it belongs constitutionally. But there are also state and individual solutions to this problem that we're facing. And again, to call it a problem is an understatement of the century. This crisis, this disaster, this national suicide that we're committing right now. There are some state and local solutions. In the past, throughout history, if you wanted to change something that was wrong, the tactic was always capture. You would capture a throne and then kill the guy sitting on it and put your guy on that throne. or you would capture the seat of government, a capital in a country, and then you would make that country meet your demands. But we in America have this great tradition of doing something else. The wind's blowing on my bullhorn here. We have this great tradition of doing something else, and that's just quitting. That's just seceding. It's just saying, you know what, I don't want to be part of your system anymore, and I'm not going to be. And that's called secession. And that's a dirty word these days because in our history, secession was tied to slavery and racism in the South, but it's also been tied to anti-slavery and anti-racism. For instance, when you had the federal government pass the fugitive slave law and require northern states to turn in runaway slaves back to the South, you had northern states say, no, we're just not going to do it. That's wrong and we're just not going to comply. And that's called nullification, by the way. So we have a great tradition of just kind of ignoring the government when it does things that we know are immoral. And
let's clarify, though, that the Civil War wasn't fought over slavery because we would not pay their tariff tax.
Well, sure, that's a whole nother speech. That's a whole nother speech.
The nullification movement started probably at least 10 years previous to the Civil War, probably more like 20 years previous to it. And it was
right, the southern states had all the ports, and the ports were all being taxed to fund the federal government.
The War of Northern Aggression, right?
Right. So we can actually use the tools of nullification on a state level to abolish this broken monetary system that's leading us straight off a cliff. We could pass, for instance, the Constitutional Tender Act, which is a template that Bill Green wrote that actually was brought up for a vote in Georgia a little while back. And you can have your state representative introduce that in your state. Call your state representative or senator and say, we want a Constitutional Tender Act, which lets your state use gold and silver as currency for debts within your state. It's perfectly constitutional. And you know, folks could still also use Federal Reserve notes, but they could also use gold and silver as currency. You know, we have this post office that used to deliver all our mail. And we never abolished the post office, but now we deliver mail through FedEx. We deliver mail through UPS. Other options just sprang up, and we started trying to use those options as well. And because they're better options, more and more people have adopted them. And that's how we could potentially unseat the Federal Reserve, is just start using gold and silver on a state level instead of these notes. Just stop participating. Just stop giving it your energy. Stop giving it your sanction. That's possible. It's doable. Google it, check it out, do some research on the Constitutional Tender Act and on monetary policy, and seriously don't write, they probably just trash your letters and delete your emails. Call up your senator, take up their time, take up their personnel, take up their phone lines, call your state senator and your state representative and tell them, ask them, have you heard of a Constitutional Tender Act? Can I email you? Can I come visit you and hand you a copy of a template for it? This is really important. It'll help our state's economy, and it'll protect our country from this most serious crisis that it faces today. So that is a solution. Give it a shot. Just might work. If enough people do something about this, we might be able to reach that critical mass and avert a disaster unlike anything we've ever seen in this country. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who wants to march? Who wants to march, man?
Woo! Yeah.
All right.
Good job, man.
Who wants to video while we march? Take pictures.
This guy does.
Yeah, this guy does.